Welcome GRD 121 Computer Graphics for probably our last exercise this semester using Gravit before we move on to working with raster graphics and Photopea. And for this one, we're just going to do a team logo. And in the past, we used to do 3 logos and 3 animals. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to find an animal. Find your favorite animal. Mine is the bison. I really like bison. And I'm just going to make a graphic out of bison. And what I'm going to trace is a real picture. Instead of tracing something that's already a silhouette and probably is already copyrighted, trace something that's actually a photo. So when I go search for something, I'm going to take it from a real photo. You might say, well, isn't the photograph copyrighted? Well, yeah, probably, but no one's going to know that I traced an outline of a buffalo from a photograph. They'll never be able to identify that. So I'm still making my own artwork from it. So I just wanted to point that out. And we're going to try to make kind of a graphic image like you'd see on a logo for a football team or any kind of sports team or college or something like that. So that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to use a slab serif. This is a slab serif. And I'll give you a list of some slab serifs to work with. There's not a whole lot in the web fonts that we have through Gravit, but there's a selection. There's maybe 8, 10 of them or something like that. This one I think is Alpha Slab 1. It's fairly nice. And you could stretch it and make it more condensed if you want to, but I'm going to probably use this again because I like this. It's called Alpha Slab 1 and it's easy to find because it's under the A's in the web fonts. So I'm going to go through this, and this is what we're going to do. Try to create a 2-color logo using kind of some sort of contrast, a warm and cool or 2 shades. This is using kind of a light version and a dark version of brown. For this, you could use, a blue and yellow or something like that, something that has warm and cool, but we'll see what happens. I used to do one with a California Sharks where I used kind of a blue and a gold kind of color, but I'll work on this one here. You can do anything you want. So if there's any kind of animal that you really like, you got a favorite animal, now's your chance. So I'm going to go File, New Design, and we can just use paper size and just make it portrait. It's fine. And before we do anything else, let's save it. Let's go File, Save to Cloud As, and just call it 13-Team Logo. This will be our team logo. And you could put your last name, first initial. And I'll get a save button down here. I think sometimes when we resave them, I don't see that button, but I see it now. So we'll hit the save button. And what we'll do first, after this saves and after it syncs, is we'll bring in a buffalo to trace. Now, last time I used, what did I use? I used kind of a jumping buffalo. I thought it would be cooler to use a jumping buffalo. It's actually a bison. I think I used this thing on my other logo. I use that thing. Let me try something else. Let me try this buffalo here. And unless it's cut off, let me just check it out. It looks a little cut off. Not that I couldn't fudge it, but I'm not sure if he has a tail or what the deal is at the end. Well, that's kind of a cool buffalo. Maybe I'll try that. And I'll just kind of fudge his butt end here a little better. Now, again, it's copyrighted, but it doesn't matter because we're just going to trace it. Copy image. And I'm going to go back to here. And remember, you have to do your keyboard. You have to do Command V or Control V. And I'll paste it in there, and I think it will paste it to the sides of your page. So I'm going to move it over a little bit, and I'll just kind of fake this thing here. I guess I don't know if I'll even put a tail on or not. What I'll do first is turn down the opacity so it's not so bright when I trace it, and then I'll lock it. And I guess I'll start right about here, and then I'll kind of fudge it at the end. Maybe I could put a little tail on them. And I'll take my pen tool, and it has a fill of white. I guess I could leave that on right now. And also one thing, when you're zooming in and zooming out, you can use I think if you're on a laptop, you could kind of pinch in and pinch out to do in different increments. Because if you just do Command plus or Control plus, Control minus, it only goes in these certain increments, like bigger increments. And you could also, if you hold your Control key, or if I'm on a Mac, I could hold my Command key and I could roll with my scroll wheel. It'll go in smaller increments too. And it'll scroll right to where I'm pointing. So if I went to the middle, I could do that. And then if I hold my space bar, I'll move this around. So I'll scroll out a little bit by holding my Command key. And I'll move this over, and I'll kind of start here. So I'm just going to trace this with my pen tool. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll just kind of I'll drag a little and then just click if you're not sure what you're going to do next. I'll go here and get this little bump, and I'll click. And then I'll go down here and just make the bump on his back, and I'll click. And I'll just kind of go straight here, and then I'll make a little bump on his forehead, and then make another bump down here. Now again, you can use any kind of animal you want. I'm just using a buffalo because I like buffalo, or bison, whatever these are known as. And he's got his big beard thing here, so I'm just going to bend in a little bit, and click, and then kind of go around his beard. And then I'll go in here and just kind of drag, make that little area in the middle. And he's got a little thing down here. And wherever I go, I'll try to drag a little bit. I guess I don't need to go in further. I'll just kind of work over to his leg and bend out on his leg. And then just finish up on his hoof here. Try to round off the bottom of his hoof and go up. Now it's kind of getting rounded off here. Again, we don't have to put a lot of detail. This is going to be like an athletic logo, so we don't need fur, anything like that. So that's going straight. I can fix that later. And I'll click there, and I'll go around, and I'll go here, and I have some straight lines here, but that's okay. And I'll go down, and I'll make that come around. I guess this is okay. I don't know. When you see the outline, then you'll have a better idea of what it looks like. So here's his belly. Now, I don't know what his leg is going to look like down here, so I'm just going to kind of fudge it a little bit. Try to make it look like another one. I don't know how that looks or not, but again, you could go back and fix it. So I'm always clicking on the forward point. And I'll go down here, click on the forward point, round off his hoof, click on the forward point. And whenever you find a change of direction, I guess just kind of go there. And again, any of this stuff we can change. And I'll go down here and try to do the whole thing like that. And I'll hold my space bar and change it to a hand and just kind of keep working here. And kind of round off his hoof. I'll go up here. Now I don't want a complete straight line, so I'll click and kind of round this a little bit. Now that doesn't look good. I'll have to fix that. Now this is where I'm not sure. I guess his tail's there, but I'm not sure. I'll just try to bend that in and bend that around. I'll just try to finish it off without doing a tail. And I could always draw a tail on him later, but let's see how that looks. That looks okay. Kind of looks like a buffalo. And I'm going to turn off his fill. And you can see what I would need here is, most of the buffalo is kind of beigey, but he has kind of a dark head, and his kind of back feet are kind of dark. So if you want to put in some kind of highlight kind of stuff, I'll show you what to do. It's kind of a different kind of technique, but I'll show you what to do. But I think, and before I do that, I'll name this, I'll just call it Bison Outline. I'll call that Bison Outline. It's just a path right now. I don't have any fill, I just have a stroke on it. And let me move him in the middle here. And I'll go back to here. So there's my Bison outline, and I could fix some of this stuff. If you need to go in with your sub-select tool and fix some things, you can. If you need to make it like disconnected or something, and you need to, really zoom in there and fix some of these paths, you can, because you can see what happened just when I made it disconnected. So now I could just pull in some of these things and maybe pull in that a little bit. That looks a little bit better. Maybe this should come out somewhat. I'm not sure about this thing here. Got a weird looking foot, but I'll kind of bring it in so it's not so... I guess that looks okay. Try to shorten things a little bit. Bring this in a little bit so it doesn't look like a fin or anything. But I think for the most part, it's going around okay. Fix his hoof a little. So you could go in and do some tweaking to this if you want. And I'm going to let that go in there. And I'm just going around. And again, you could be working on an octopus for that matter. And there's his nose kind of shape. I'll make that stick out a little bit more, a little more prominent, because I might use it. Because if we put in some accents here, we might want to put on an eye and something. I don't know if you'd want to have just a silhouette of a buffalo, so I definitely want a horn, maybe some kind of eye shape, and maybe you'd even have this thing here. And maybe that would even be a lighter color. And I'll show you what to do to get some of these darker colors, which may look okay. It's a different technique, so it'll take a little longer than just kind of saying, okay, now it's done. So to do some of those highlights, it'll be a little bit different to get some of these shades under here, and I'll show you what to do. What I'll do next is I'm going to do his head. And I'm just going to make his head a different color. And you might say, well, how are you going to make his head a different color? Well, I'm going to trace over just this part here and then get an intersection. Get an intersection of the line I draw and his head so they kind of match up. So there's like a darker color shape over top of that. And I'll show you what I mean. So this is the Bison outline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. So that way you don't mess with the original one, because every time you do something like an intersection, it'll delete the original path. So make sure you always keep the original. So I'm going to do Command D. And I'm going to lock this one. And this is Bison outline, and I'll just call it copy for now, so I know it's my disposable one. So this is my disposable outline. And you might say, well, what are you doing with this disposable outline? I could even lock this temporarily so all that stuff goes away. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a shape around his head. I just want his head, and I want it kind of darker. Actually, and I might not include his nose. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. Now, there's ways you could probably do this with the freehand tool, but I'm just going to take the pen. And remember, I'm going to start outside. So I'm just going to go here. It doesn't have to even be perfect. I'll round it a little bit, and I'll go down here. And notice I'm going outside, and I'm going completely around. But I'm going to go in and get his nose shape. I can even make it a little rounder. So you see this shape I just made. And what I'm going to do with this shape is I'm going to make it fill in with a dark shape and be an intersection. So this path that I just made and this Bison Outline copy, which I'm now going to unlock, just the copy, and I'm going to take my regular pointer tool and I'm going to select that shape. Now make sure you keep your original one locked. Your Bison Outline should be locked. The copy is the one, and if you hold shift and click on that line, the edge, and then hold shift and click on this. Let's see, both are selected. There's two selected. They're both in gray right now. They're both selected. So that big shape I made that goes around the buffalo and the buffalo shape are selected. And let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up here and say intersect. And you see what it made? It made a shape that goes around just around the head, and I'm even going to convert it to a path so it gets rid of the original. I'll just convert it to a path. And there it is. There's the path of his head, and it's just going around his head, and it's over top of the Bison Outline. And it got rid of that copy one, so that's why we're going to probably make another one again. And I'm just going to call it head. And I don't know if you can picture what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this a darker color and this a lighter color, and then we'll probably just put a horn over top. But that way I could even put some kind of darker color over there for his nose. I don't know if I could do something with his eye. We'll see what we do for his eye. Maybe I'll put a black color over there. And then we can maybe even put some highlights kind of under his leg. We'll try the same thing with his leg under here, so that his kind of the legs in shadow appear kind of dark. So I'm going to do the same thing, same exact technique that I did with that. So I have a head, I have a Bison Outline, and again, just so you see what I'm talking about, because maybe you don't. Here's Bison Outline, and if I gave him a fill, now I'm going to take this away, but if I give him a fill and I made it something like, I'll go orange and go real light. There's a beigey kind of fill. And then I clicked on this thing, the head. What I could do with the head is give the head a fill, and it looks like black right now, but I'll go in here, and maybe I'll even take the eyedropper and select on this thing, so it's the same color, and then kind of go darker, so it's in the same family. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just kind of making a different shade. So I'm also going to make some of this be kind of in shadow down here, so you get some depth to it, so it's not just one singular color. So that's what I'm trying to do. Now, I'm going to get rid of both of these colors because I don't want them right now. I just wanted to show you that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get rid of the fill here, and then on this thing, the outline, I'm going to get rid of the fill. Now, I have to use the outline again because look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a shape that kind of gets this stuff here, and even his legs, his whole legs. I'll just make his legs in shadow. So his legs, it gets a little depth into his body here and on the bottom of his belly. So there's a darker shape down there. So his head isn't the only dark thing. So that means I'm going to go to Bison Outline. Now it's unlocked right now because you can see I just clicked on it. It's unlocked. I can't duplicate it when it's locked. So I'm going to duplicate it again. Command D or Control D and just call it copy again. So you know that's like a disposable one. And then lock the one you want to keep. You don't want to get rid of that one. And actually, I'm going to drag head kind of down here. If you left head there, that's okay, but I'm going to move head down here so that I'm just dealing with outline, copy, and then I'm just going to draw a shape that's going to be the kind of the accent shape. So I'll just use the pen tool. And if this happens, lock this. I don't want to see all those anchor points. So I'm just going to draw a shape that kind of comes in here and is going to be my accent. And remember, I could go around all this stuff. I could go down here. I'm just going to click, and it doesn't even matter if they're real straight line segments. I'm just going to go up here, and then I'm going to go down here, and then kind of just make it go into his belly a little. And kind of go up here and make it kind of go down a little bit, and click on the forward point. And then go around here, make it come out a little. And now I could just go around here and just go around the whole shape. Because remember, this is just going to get the intersection, and click on the last point. So there's my shape. That's going to be a dark over top of any part of the buffalo. So if you want to get rid of the fill, you can get rid of the fill. but that's a shape, so everything in there is going to be dark, if you could picture that. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to select this. Now I have to unlock that, and I'm going to shift click and select that. Now again, remember, my Bison outline is safe, and my head is safe. So I'm just dealing with this path I just drew, and the Bison outline copy. I'm just using the outline of the bison again. And this has to be on top. This path that I'm doing, that I just drew, has to be on top. So I have them both selected, and I know they're both selected because they're both gray. And I'm going to just use intersect. And let me hit save. Oh, it's syncing, so I'm getting a little delayed here. I'm going to hit save here so it syncs. And again, I still have them selected, so I'm going to go intersect. And there's my intersection. So now I have that shape. Now, you can see when I hover over it, I'm still seeing that compound shape. Just get rid of that by going convert to path. And now I have that, and I'm going to call it, I'll call it underneath shadow. How about that? That's what it actually is. So I have my head and underneath shadow. And then one last shape I can make here, I'll just make a separate horn shape. I'll go here, and I'll just draw horns. And there's my horn shape, and I'll just call it horn. Now you could make something more complicated or less complicated. I only made two shapes that are kind of accent shapes. And this thing, I know a horn would be white, so I'll just make it white. So I'll give it a fill of white right off the bat. And we'll just color stuff, and then I'll take a break and work on the text. And I don't need outlines on here, so I could get rid of the borders. I'll just trash the borders. And this thing, this shape, I'm not sure what color that shape's going to be yet. I'm going to get the main color of the buffalo first. So I'm going to click on here, on the edge if I can, and it's still locked, so I got to unlock it. And this is the one I said I'm just going to do a fill and just be a real beigey kind of color. Now you could sample the beigey color, you could just make one. You could just go to fill, and just, I always use orange. Obviously you don't want an orange buffalo, but you could just kind of go in here and just get a beigey kind of color. Just something like that is fine. It looks nice, the white looks nice on there, and that's good. And I'll take away the border. I'll go down here and get rid of the border. Now these two shapes, this one is the underneath, this one is the head shape, and what I'm going to do is I could get rid of the border right now and add a fill, and then I'm going to go in here, and actually what I'll do, let me go back here, I'm going to take the eyedropper and select this, and then go in here again. That way I can get something that's kind of in this realm. It's kind of like a darker version of that. You can kind of keep it in that family, so that looks okay. It's kind of a dark, I'll go a little bit darker. So that looks pretty good. Now, I could still put an eye on here in black, and I could put a nose on here if I want, but I think everything looks okay. I think that looks okay for now. And so what I'm going to do, I have my horn, my underneath shadow, my head, my bison outline. I have all those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all of those. I don't have to lock them. I'm just going to hide them. I'll just hide them, and I'm going to zoom in and try to make an eye and try to make a nostril. So let's see how I do with that. Just make a little eye here. And again, I'll just make it real rough with the pen. I'll just kind of go around here. And it could be real graphic looking. And I'll just continue that. And that'll just be black. So the fill will probably just be black. So I'll just make it black right now. It'll just be something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing, and I'll name this eye. So I know it's the eye. And then I'll go over here, and I'll just make something that looks like the nostril kind of thing. Now it's filling with black. Now, if you ever run into a situation where you have to stop, and then you want to go in here and just get rid of the fill, and now you have to start up again, the best thing to do with the pen tool is just kind of drag on the point, and that'll kind of continue it. Just drag on the point. Try not to click on the point. Drag on the point, and then I'll go over here, and that didn't work. And that's okay. I wanted to show you that it's not always perfect. Actually, I think in this case, I would recommend just getting rid of this thing. Zooming in a little bit more. And what I'll do is I'll just go here. I'll click it, click, and then I'll make it kind of rounded. Make it rounded in there. And click on here, and it comes out like that. So that should look like some kind of nostril. That's all it has to do is look like a nostril. And I could make the fill black. I could get rid of the border if I want to take it with my regular pointer and just move it a little bit. And I could certainly add more to it, but I think that'll look like a nostril. So I have my eye and a nostril, and that means I'm going to call that nostril, or nose, whatever you want to call it. So I got a nostril there, and that'll be on kind of a lighter area. This should be on the darker. We might make it white if it's hard to see, but let's see what we got here with colors. We're going to take a look at our colors, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll go work with our text in part 2. Move this in the middle, and I'll reveal all these things again. Actually, I'll turn off the image. Let me turn off the image, and I'll turn on the outline. I'll turn on the head. I'll turn on the shadow underneath, and I'll turn on the horn, and the eye and the nostril are already there. So that's not too bad. I mean, you could certainly put something else, you could always draw some kind of little thing on here if you wanted to, go in here and say, I want a little, shadow and some muscular something on the back. And you could put a little highlight on the back and give them a fill color of, take my eyedropper of that. You could do something like that. That might give them a little more something. You could make the hoofs dark or something, but that looks okay, I think. Again, it's just our football logo here. And that's what I have so far. And I'll make sure I call this like shadow on back. Be very careful, just so you know what everything is. That's the shadow on the back. So that's my buffalo that I traced from that picture, but I'm going to turn off the picture so I don't see it. And that's my buffalo. And if you want to, you could highlight everything of the buffalo, make sure they're all unlocked, and you could just group it. Here's the group thing. And that way you can make it smaller. And what we're going to do is just put some text around it and we'll be done. So that's the first part. Obviously that took some work to do these shadows, and there's different ways you could do it. You could draw them in as much as you want, anything like that. So it's basically an outline of an animal, and then you're putting some little details inside. But that's the end of part 1, and for part 2 we'll just put some text on here and finish up our logo. And that's for 13 team logo, and make sure you save, and then we'll come back in part 2 and just do some text. We'll try to do text on a path, see how that looks. Sometimes it's a little iffy in Gravit, but we'll do the best we can.